My parents forced me to split our family business 50-50 with my sister who never worked a day there, so I quit and joined our biggest competitor. Now they're selling the business after she destroyed everything my grandfather built over 50 years. I'm George, 29 male, and I need some perspective on this situation with my family. My parents Leonard, 58 male, and Martha, 55 female, own a successful plumbing business that my grandfather started in 1967. My sister Gloria, 32 female, and I grew up around this business, but we took very different paths. Some background about how things worked in our house. Gloria was always the star child. When she was 16 and I was 13, she crashed Dad's truck into a neighbor's fence after taking it without permission. My parents laughed it off and said teenagers make mistakes. That same year, I forgot to take out the trash one morning and got grounded for 2 weeks with no video games or friends. Gloria got her first car at 17, a brand new Honda Civic that cost my parents $22,000. When I turned 17, my parents handed me the keys to a 1998 Toyota Corolla with 180,000 miles on it that they bought from a junkyard for $800. They told me I should be grateful to have any car at all. The pattern continued through high school and college. Gloria went to a private university that cost $45,000 per year. My parents paid for everything: tuition, room and board, spending money, spring break trips, even her sorority dues. She changed her major 4 times and took 6 years to graduate with a degree in communications. When I graduated high school with a 3.8 GPA, my parents told me I needed to figure out college myself because they had already spent so much on Gloria. I worked 2 jobs and took out student loans to pay for community college and then transferred to a state school. But here's where it gets relevant to the current situation. Throughout all of this, I was the one who worked at the family business. Starting at age 14, I spent every summer, every weekend, and every school break learning the trade. I started by organizing tools and cleaning up job sites. By 16, I was doing basic plumbing installations. By 18, I could handle most residential jobs on my own. Gloria never showed any interest in the business. During summers when I was working 10-hour days, she was at camps or hanging out with friends. My parents never even suggested she should help out. When I would come home covered in mud and exhausted, Gloria would be sitting in the air conditioning complaining that she was bored. After high school, I went straight into working full-time at the business while taking evening classes at community college. I learned every aspect of the operation: billing, scheduling, supply ordering, equipment maintenance, customer service. My grandfather, who was still alive then, taught me about the business relationships he had built over decades. He showed me which suppliers offered the best deals, which customers always paid on time, and which jobs to avoid. Gloria graduated college in 2019 and moved to California to pursue acting. My parents gave her $15,000 to help her get started out there. She lived in Los Angeles for 3 years, working occasional jobs as a server while going to auditions. My parents sent her money every month to help with rent. In 2022, she moved back home after failing to get any significant acting roles. When she came back, my parents immediately offered her a position at the business. They suggested she could handle marketing and social media since she had a college degree. I had been running most of the day-to-day operations by then, working 60 hours a week. My grandfather had passed away in 2021, and my dad was starting to talk about slowing down. Gloria lasted exactly 3 weeks at the business. She complained that the work was boring and that she didn't want to get her hands dirty. She quit after getting into an argument with a longtime customer who complained about her attitude. My parents didn't push her to stay. Instead, they said she needed to find her own path and that not everyone was cut out for manual labor. After Gloria quit, she got a part-time job at a boutique clothing store in town. She still lives at home and my parents don't charge her rent. They bought her a new car last year when her old one broke down. Meanwhile, I've been paying rent to live in the apartment above the business office, even though I work there full-time. Now here's where the real problem started. Last month, my dad sat me down and told me he and my mom had been talking about the future of the business. He said they wanted to make sure both Gloria and I were taken care of when they retire. He explained that they had updated their will to split the business 50-50 between Gloria and me when they pass away. I asked him why Gloria would get half when she had never contributed anything to the business and had actually quit when given the chance to work there. My dad said Gloria was still his daughter and deserved her fair share of the family assets. He said the business was successful because of the family name, not just because of my work. I pointed out that I had been working there for 15 years and knew every aspect of the operation. I told him that Gloria didn't even know how to write up an estimate or where we kept the main water shutoff tools. My dad got defensive and said I was being selfish and that family businesses should stay in the family. Then my mom joined the conversation and made things worse. She said Gloria had been through a lot of disappointment with her acting career and needed financial security. She suggested that maybe Gloria could come back to work at the business part-time and learn the ropes again. When I reminded them that Gloria had already quit once, my mom said people change and deserve second chances. The conversation ended with my parents making it clear that the 50-50 split was not up for discussion. They said they had already met with their lawyer and updated all the paperwork. My dad said he hoped I would be supportive of their decision and help Gloria learn the business when the time came. I left that meeting and drove around town for 2 hours trying to process what had happened. I had spent 15 years building this business alongside my grandfather and father. I knew every customer, every supplier, every piece of equipment. I had sacrificed my social life, my college experience, and my dating life to make sure the business succeeded. And now I was being told that Gloria, who had contributed nothing and actually caused problems when she tried to help, would get exactly the same reward as me. The next week, things got even worse. Gloria apparently found out about the will discussion because she started making comments about our future partnership. She told me she had been thinking about coming back to work at the business and had ideas for modernizing our approach. She suggested we could expand into bathroom remodeling and kitchen installations. When I explained that we didn't have the licensing or expertise for that kind of work, she said I was being negative and resistant to change. Gloria also started talking about the office space above the business where I live. She said when we inherited the business together, she would probably want to use that space for business meetings and client consultations. She suggested I could find my own apartment since I had been living there for free anyway. When I pointed out that I pay rent for that space, she seemed surprised and said she didn't know about that arrangement. Last weekend, my parents invited Gloria and me over for dinner to discuss the business transition more. My dad said he was thinking about retiring within the next 5 years and wanted to make sure we were both prepared to take over. He suggested Gloria should start working at the business again immediately so she could learn the operations before the transition. Gloria agreed and said she was excited about the opportunity. She said she had learned a lot about business and customer service during her time in California and was ready to apply those skills to the family business. My parents seemed pleased with her enthusiasm. Then my dad dropped another bombshell. He said since Gloria would be coming back to work at the business, they thought it would be fair to adjust my salary. He explained that they would need to pay Gloria a competitive wage, and since business income would be split between 2 people instead of 1, they would need to reduce my pay by about 30%. I asked how that made any sense since I would still be doing the same amount of work, probably more since I would need to train Gloria. My dad said Gloria had a college degree and would be bringing valuable skills to the business that justified a higher salary than what I was currently making. He said once Gloria was fully trained, we could split responsibilities and both work less hours. My mom added that this arrangement would be good practice for when Gloria and I eventually inherited the business together. She said we needed to learn how to work as partners and share decision-making responsibilities. I told them I needed time to think about everything and left dinner early. Gloria followed me outside and said she hoped I wasn't upset about her coming back to work. She said she was looking forward to working with me and learning from my experience. She also mentioned that she had been talking to her friends about the business and had some ideas for social media marketing that could really help us grow. It's been a week since that dinner and I haven't given my parents an answer about Gloria coming back to work or about the salary reduction. I keep thinking about all the years I spent learning this trade, all the weekends I worked while my friends were having fun, all the sacrifices I made to help build this business. Now I'm supposed to accept getting paid less money to train someone who already quit once and will eventually get half of everything I've worked for. My parents have been calling and texting me asking for a decision. They said Gloria is ready to start work next Monday and they need to know if I'm on board with the plan. They also said if I'm not comfortable with the new arrangement, maybe I should consider finding other employment while Gloria gets established at the business. I don't know what to do here. Am I being unreasonable for thinking this whole situation is unfair? Should I just accept that Gloria is going to get half the business regardless of her contribution? Or should I stand up for myself and risk damaging my relationship with my family? Update 1. Well, things have gotten much worse since my last post. I decided to tell my parents that I wasn't comfortable with Gloria coming back to work at the business or with taking a pay cut. That conversation did not go well. When I told them I thought the 50-50 inheritance split was unfair given our different levels of contribution, my dad got angry and said I was being greedy and ungrateful. He reminded me that he and my mom had given me a job for 15 years and that I should be thankful for the opportunity. He said plenty of parents don't include their children in family businesses at all. My mom was even harsher. She said I was acting entitled and selfish. She pointed out that Gloria was older and had been through more struggles than me. She said Gloria deserved a chance to succeed in the family business and that I was standing in the way of that opportunity. The conversation ended with my parents giving me an ultimatum. They said I could either accept Gloria as a full partner in the business with equal inheritance rights, or I could find another job. They gave me 1 week to decide. I spent that week looking into what my options were. I reached out to other plumbing companies in the area to see if anyone was hiring experienced plumbers. I also talked to a lawyer about whether I had any legal claim to the business given my years of work there. The lawyer told me that unless I had a written contract or formal partnership agreement, I had no legal rights to the business. Since I had always been an employee, even though I worked there for 15 years, my parents were free to leave the business to whoever they wanted. He said my best option was to negotiate some kind of severance package if I decided to leave. During that week, Gloria started showing up at the business anyway. My parents had given her keys and access to the office. She spent time going through customer files and supplier contracts. She also rearranged some of the office furniture and put up motivational posters on the walls. One morning I arrived at work to find Gloria had thrown away a bunch of my grandfather's old tools and reference books. When I asked her why, she said they were taking up space and looked unprofessional. She had replaced them with a fancy coffee machine and some plants. When I told her those tools had sentimental value and were still functional, she said I was being too attached to old things and needed to embrace modernization. That same week, Gloria started contacting our regular customers to introduce herself as the new co-owner of the business. Several customers called me confused because they had been working with me for years and didn't understand why someone new was suddenly involved. One longtime customer told me Gloria had suggested we completely redo their annual maintenance contract to include services we don't actually provide. I also found out Gloria had been telling people around town that she was taking over the family business because I was planning to leave. When I confronted her about this, she said she was just trying to establish relationships with customers and community members. She said I was being paranoid and defensive. The final straw came when Gloria scheduled a meeting with our biggest commercial client without telling me. This client represents about 30% of our annual revenue, and I have been personally managing their account for 8 years. Gloria told them she was implementing new quality control procedures and wanted to renegotiate their service rates. The client called me directly after the meeting to ask what was going on. They said Gloria had been unprepared for basic questions about their current service agreement and had made promises about expanded services that we can't deliver. They were considering switching to another plumbing company because they were concerned about the sudden changes in management. I managed to smooth things over with that client, but it made me realize that Gloria's involvement was already damaging relationships I had spent years building. When I told my parents about the situation, they said Gloria was just trying to be proactive and that I should be more supportive of her efforts. At the end of the week, I told my parents I would stay at the business but that I wanted a written agreement outlining my responsibilities and Gloria's responsibilities. I also asked for a timeline showing exactly when Gloria would be considered fully trained and qualified to make decisions about customer accounts. My parents rejected both requests. They said they didn't want to create formal agreements that would complicate family relationships. They said Gloria and I needed to work things out between ourselves and learn to function as partners. That's when I realized my parents weren't actually interested in what was best for the business. They just wanted to force Gloria and me into some kind of partnership arrangement regardless of whether it made sense operationally. I started making preparations to leave the business. I quietly reached out to 3 of our main competitors to see if they were interested in hiring an experienced plumber who came with existing customer relationships. 2 of them were very interested and offered me positions with higher salaries than what I was making at the family business. I also started documenting all the customer relationships, supplier contacts, and operational procedures that I had developed over the years. I figured if I was going to leave, I should at least preserve that knowledge in case it became useful later. But before I could finalize anything, something unexpected happened. Gloria had been working at the business for about 2 weeks when she got into a major argument with our most senior employee, Tom, 48M. Tom has been with the company for 12 years and is basically my right-hand man for all the complex commercial jobs. The argument started because Gloria told Tom he needed to start wearing polo shirts with the company logo instead of his regular work clothes. Tom explained that he works in crawl spaces and around pipes all day, so he needs clothes that can get dirty and torn. Gloria said our company image was important and that all employees should look professional. Tom came to me about the situation, and I told him to ignore Gloria's dress code demands since she wasn't actually his supervisor. But Gloria had already told my parents that Tom was being insubordinate and disrespectful to her authority. My parents called a meeting with Tom, Gloria, and me to discuss the situation. During this meeting, Gloria accused Tom of being resistant to change and not respecting her position in the company. Tom calmly explained that he had been following the same work procedures for 12 years and didn't understand why things needed to change suddenly. Then Gloria made a huge mistake. She told Tom that when she and I inherited the business, there would probably be staff changes to bring in more professional employees. She said some of the current employees might not be a good fit for the company's new direction. Tom looked at me and asked if I agreed with Gloria's assessment. I told him that he was one of our most valuable employees and that I had no intention of making any staff changes. Gloria interrupted and said that as co-owners, she and I would need to make those decisions together. Tom stood up and told my parents he was giving his 2 weeks' notice. He said he had never been disrespected like that in his 12 years with the company and that he wasn't going to work for someone who didn't value his contributions. He said he had already been contacted by other plumbing companies interested in hiring experienced workers. My parents tried to convince Tom to stay, but he had made up his mind. He said Gloria's attitude and comments about staff changes had made it clear that long-time employees weren't welcome in the company's future plans. After Tom left the meeting, I told my parents this was exactly what I had been worried about. Gloria had been at the business for 2 weeks and had already driven away our most experienced employee. My parents said Tom was overreacting and that Gloria was just trying to bring professional standards to the business. That night, Gloria called me to discuss the Tom situation. She said she didn't understand why he had gotten so upset about her suggestions for improving company operations. She said if Tom wasn't willing to adapt to new management styles, maybe it was better that he left. I explained to Gloria that Tom handled all of our most complex commercial accounts and that losing him would be a major problem for the business. She said we could hire someone else with better qualifications and a more positive attitude about change. That conversation made me realize Gloria had no understanding of how the business actually operated or what made it successful. She thought employees were interchangeable and that customer relationships were just paperwork that could be transferred to anyone. The next day, Tom's resignation became the talk of the local plumbing community. 2 other employees asked me privately if they should start looking for other jobs too. Our main supplier called to ask if there were management changes happening that he should know about. I realized the situation was spiraling out of control and that Gloria's involvement was going to destroy the business my grandfather had built. That's when I made my final decision about what to do. Update 2. I ended up quitting the family business and taking a job with Peterson Plumbing, one of our biggest competitors. The owner, Bill Peterson, 52M, offered me a 20% salary increase and a profit-sharing agreement. He also hired Tom, who had been planning to leave the area entirely before Bill made him an offer. My parents were furious when I told them about my decision. My dad accused me of sabotaging the family business by going to work for a competitor. He said I was being vindictive and trying to hurt Gloria's chances of success. My mom said I was abandoning my family over money and that I would regret this decision later. Gloria's reaction was different than I expected. She seemed relieved that I was leaving and said it would give her a chance to run the business her own way without having to deal with resistance to change. She said she had lots of ideas for improving operations and customer service that she could implement more easily without me there. My first month at Peterson Plumbing went really well. Bill paired me with their most experienced crew leader to learn their procedures, but I was able to contribute immediately because of my background with commercial accounts. Several customers who had worked with me at my family's business specifically requested me for their projects. Meanwhile, things at my family's business started falling apart pretty quickly. Gloria tried to handle some of the jobs I had been managing, but she made several costly mistakes. She ordered the wrong materials for a major bathroom renovation, which delayed the project by 2 weeks and cost the business about $3,000 in expedited shipping and customer compensation. She also lost the commercial client that I had been managing for 8 years. Gloria tried to renegotiate their maintenance contract without understanding their specific needs, and they terminated the relationship. That client now works with Peterson Plumbing, and I manage their account again. But the real problem started when Gloria tried to expand the business into areas where we didn't have proper licensing. She accepted a kitchen remodeling job that required electrical and tile work that our plumbers weren't qualified to do. When the customer realized the work wasn't being done to code, they filed a complaint with the state licensing board. My dad had to hire outside contractors to fix Gloria's mistakes, which cost the business about $8,000. The licensing board also opened an investigation into whether the business was operating outside its permitted scope of work. Around this time, Gloria started calling me asking for help with various business problems. She wanted me to explain how certain customer billing worked and which suppliers offered the best prices for specific materials. When I reminded her that I no longer worked there, she said I was being petty and that family should help family regardless of employment status. I refused to provide free consulting services to a business that had essentially forced me to leave. Gloria got upset and said I was being vindictive and trying to make her fail. She said all her problems were happening because I had left and taken important knowledge with me. Things got worse when my parents had to lay off 2 employees because revenue was dropping significantly. Between losing major customers and Gloria's costly mistakes, the business couldn't afford to maintain the same payroll. Gloria blamed the layoffs on my departure, saying the business was struggling because I had taken customers with me to Peterson Plumbing. My parents called me and asked if I would consider coming back to work part-time to help Gloria get established. They offered to match Peterson's salary and give me more flexibility with scheduling. When I declined, my dad accused me of deliberately trying to destroy the family business out of spite. The conversation got heated when my dad said I was being selfish and ungrateful after everything they had done for me over the years. I reminded him that I had worked at the business for 15 years, often for below market wages, and had helped build most of the customer relationships that Gloria was now losing. My mom joined the call and said Gloria was doing her best in a difficult situation and that I should be more supportive. She said Gloria had never managed a business before and needed time to learn. I pointed out that Gloria had refused to learn when she worked there before and had quit rather than putting in the effort to understand the operations. The call ended with my parents saying they were disappointed in my attitude and that they hoped I would reconsider my position. They said Gloria was family and deserved my support regardless of our business disagreements. About 2 weeks later, I got a call from my uncle Rick, 51M, who is my dad's brother. Rick owns an electrical contracting business and had often worked with our plumbing company on larger projects. He said Gloria had contacted him about partnering on some jobs, but that her proposals didn't make sense from a business perspective. Rick told me Gloria had suggested they could split profits 50-50 on projects whereas electrical work represented only about 20% of the total job scope. When Rick explained that profit sharing should be based on actual contribution and costs, Gloria accused him of being unfair and trying to take advantage of her inexperience. Rick also mentioned that Gloria had been telling other contractors around town that she was modernizing the family business and that previous management had been too conservative and old-fashioned. Several contractors had called Rick to ask what was really happening with the business because Gloria's statements didn't match what they knew about my dad's management style. This conversation made me realize Gloria was not only damaging the business internally but also harming its reputation in the local contracting community. Word was getting around that the business was unstable and that the new management didn't understand basic industry practices. A few days after talking to Rick, I ran into Mrs. Henderson, 67F, who had been one of our longtime residential customers. She told me Gloria had visited her house to discuss updating her annual maintenance contract, but had spent most of the time complaining about how the business had been run in the past and how she was going to improve things. Mrs. Henderson said Gloria had criticized some of the work I had done at her house over the years, saying it wasn't up to current standards and that she would need to have everything inspected and possibly redone. Mrs. Henderson was confused because she had never had any problems with my work and had been recommending our business to her friends for years. Mrs. Henderson asked me if she should continue working with a family business or if she should find another plumber. I told her she should choose whoever she felt most comfortable with, but I also gave her Bill Peterson's contact information in case she wanted to get a second opinion about her maintenance needs. That weekend, Gloria showed up at my apartment to confront me about Mrs. Henderson. She said she knew I had been telling customers to switch to Peterson Plumbing and that I was actively trying to sabotage her business. I told her I hadn't solicited any customers from the family business, but that I wasn't going to lie to people who asked me direct questions about their service options. Gloria accused me of being vindictive and said I was trying to ruin her chances of success because I was jealous that she was running the business instead of me. She said my parents had been right to choose her over me because I was too negative and resistant to change. I told Gloria that the business problems weren't happening because of anything I was doing. They were happening because she didn't understand the industry or how to manage customer relationships. I said if she wanted the business to succeed, she needed to focus on learning the fundamentals instead of blaming other people for her mistakes. Gloria got angry and said I was condescending and trying to make her feel stupid. She said she had a college degree and had learned about business management, which was more relevant than my technical plumbing knowledge. She said the business needed modern leadership, not old-fashioned approaches that didn't work anymore. That conversation convinced me that Gloria was never going to acknowledge her role in the business problems. She was completely committed to the idea that all the difficulties were caused by my departure and that she was the victim of unfair circumstances. Last week, I heard from another contractor that my parents are considering selling the business. Apparently, the financial losses and licensing issues have made it too difficult for Gloria to manage effectively. My parents are getting older and don't want to take over daily operations again, but they also can't afford to keep losing money while Gloria learns on the job. I don't know if the rumors about selling are true, but it wouldn't surprise me. The business that my grandfather built over 50 years is being destroyed by someone who never wanted to put in the work to understand it properly. Update 3. The rumors about my parents selling the business turned out to be true. Last month, they sold the company assets, customer list, and business name to Peterson Plumbing for about 60% of what the business would have been worth 2 years ago. Bill Peterson offered my parents a fair price considering the business had lost several major customers and was facing licensing issues. My parents had to take the reduced price because they couldn't afford to keep covering Gloria's mistakes while she learned the business. Gloria was devastated by the sale. She had been telling people around town that she was turning the business around and had big plans for expansion. When my parents told her they were selling, she accused them of giving up too easily and not believing in her abilities. My parents tried to explain that they couldn't afford the financial losses anymore and that the licensing problems Gloria had created were going to take years and thousands of dollars to resolve. Gloria blamed all the problems on my departure and said if I had stayed to help her, none of this would have happened. The sale process took about 6 weeks to complete. During that time, Gloria became increasingly desperate to prove she could manage the business successfully. She started accepting jobs at below-cost rates just to show that she could bring in customers. This made the financial situation even worse and convinced my parents that selling was the right decision. Gloria also tried to convince some customers to follow her to a new business she was planning to start. She didn't have proper licensing to operate independently, but she told several customers she would be able to provide the same services at lower rates. When my parents found out about this, they had to include a non-compete clause in the sale agreement to protect Peterson Plumbing from Gloria trying to steal customers. After the sale was finalized, my parents used the money to pay off business debts and cover the costs of fixing Gloria's licensing violations. They were left with about 40% of what they had expected to have for retirement. My dad had to take a part-time job with another plumbing company to supplement their income. Gloria moved out of my parents' house and got an apartment with money she borrowed from my mom's sister. She's working at a real estate office now, but she keeps talking about starting her own business once she figures out how to get proper licensing. My parents blame me for the business failure. They say if I had been more supportive of Gloria and helped train her properly, she would have been successful. They think I sabotaged her efforts by leaving and taking customers with me to Peterson Plumbing. I haven't had much contact with my family since the business sale. My parents invited me to Gloria's birthday dinner last month, but the conversation was tense and uncomfortable. Gloria spent most of the evening complaining about how unfairly she had been treated and how the business failure wasn't her fault. My dad pulled me aside after dinner and said he hoped we could rebuild our relationship now that the business issues were resolved. He suggested we could all move forward and put the past behind us. When I didn't immediately agree, he said I was holding grudges and needed to forgive Gloria for her mistakes. I told my dad I wasn't interested in pretending that Gloria's failures were just innocent mistakes. She had destroyed a business that took 3 generations to build, and my parents had enabled her by refusing to acknowledge her incompetence. My dad said I was being harsh and unforgiving. The conversation ended with my dad saying he was disappointed that I couldn't be more understanding about family difficulties. He said blood was thicker than water and that we needed to support each other regardless of past problems. I left that dinner knowing I probably wouldn't be spending much time with my family going forward. They're still convinced that Gloria was a victim of circumstances rather than the cause of the business failure. Until they acknowledge what really happened, there's no point in maintaining relationships built on denial and blame shifting. My career at Peterson Plumbing has been going well. Bill promoted me to crew supervisor after 6 months, and I'm now managing some of the commercial accounts that used to work with my family's business. Tom and I work together regularly, and we've built a good reputation with customers who value experienced, reliable service. I've also been saving money to eventually start my own plumbing business. I have the technical skills, customer relationships, and industry knowledge needed to be successful. The main difference is that I'll be building something based on competence and hard work rather than family connections and entitlement. Sometimes I wonder if things could have worked out differently if my parents had been honest about Gloria's limitations from the beginning. If they had acknowledged that she wasn't suited for the plumbing business and had made different inheritance plans, maybe we could have maintained better family relationships. But I think my parents were so committed to treating Gloria and me equally that they couldn't accept that we had different abilities and work ethics. They wanted to believe that Gloria could succeed in the business if she just tried hard enough, even when all the evidence showed otherwise. The business my grandfather started in 1967 is gone now. The Peterson Company kept the name and customer list, but it's not really the same business anymore. All those years of building relationships and reputation were wasted because my parents prioritized Gloria's feelings over business reality. I don't regret leaving when I did. If I had stayed and watched Gloria destroy the business while my parents protected her from consequences, I would probably be even more resentful now. At least this way, I was able to build my own career and avoid being dragged down by their poor decisions. My parents still call occasionally to update me on Gloria's latest plans and to suggest we should all get together for holidays. I'm polite but not particularly interested in rebuilding close relationships with people who blamed me for problems I tried to prevent. The whole situation taught me that family loyalty has limits. When family members make destructive choices and refuse to acknowledge the consequences, sometimes the healthiest response is to step away and focus on building your own life.